I'd like to welcome you. It is our panel about pop culture. I'm Shay, I'm going to be your host for it. And you've got four wonderful people sitting up there right now. And I think it's a good time to get them to introduce themselves to you as to why they're here.
My name is Tom Whalen, and I'm an actor and a director, and I guess my tie-in to pop culture, some of the things that I work on, I've worked on Pokemon for a very long time, and that is certainly entrenched in world popular culture for the last 17 years. I've also been involved in some other sort of iconic shows like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, G.I. Joe, and have sort of been an avid fan and consumer of pop culture all my life, and now I'm a parent of 3 children, so I'm getting to sort of experience it all over again with the next generation and stuff through them. So there you go.
Gives you a nice different perspective with the kids.
Yes.
My name is Eric Ruth, and I'm a video game developer. I've worked both indie and contracts for larger companies, including Valve, and right now I'm working with Riot Games, famous for League of Legends. And I know, studying video game history through my entire life, I know an exorbitant amount about the history of video games, starting with Nintendo in the 1800s being a playing card company, all the way up through people like influential nowadays like Tim Schafer at Double Fine, or Brian Reynolds, who made a home in Zynga recently, and all of the great information contained within. So if you want knowledge on video games, past and present, I'm your guy.
Sweet. Hi, I'm Andre, and I'm a Black Nerd. I do the YouTube channel Black Nerd Comedy. I do weekly rants, reviews, event coverage, all talking about geek and nerd culture. Both current pop culture as well as a lot of nostalgia cultures. I talk a lot about 80s and 90s cartoons, movies, television shows. I've gotten to interview former Power Rangers, Ninja Turtle voices, Nickelodeon cast members of various shows, and just really indulge myself in a lot of pop culture. Like literally every video behind me is a wide collection of various action figures and toys that I get to explain every time I bring a date home. So,
And that's extremely often, right?
yeah, which is, yes. What, is this leap year yet? No, so it's just a lot of fun. It's good to just really be able to express that culture and enjoy it. And almost everything I like is getting rebooted nowadays, so it's good to bring it all back again.
Everyone gets a reboot except the reboot.
Everything gets a reboot.
Okay, my name's Michele Ivey. I'm from Cowabunga Corner. I'm mostly known for these 4 green guys that run around with masked Ninja Turtles. I know their history from all the way to the beginning to now. That's my main area of interest, but I also keep up with things like Muppets, which is coming back with their new movies lately. And I keep up with a lot of cartoons on Cartoon Network, and I've been watching shows like Supernatural and keeping up with a few different things. I like getting around, but Ninja Turtles is my main thing. Cowabunga.
Supernatural was a great 5-season show. What a fantastic 5-season show that was.
It's still on.
Nope, it's a 5-season show. No seasons exist after 5. It was a great arc. It finished up. I was pleased. Good job. Well played.
Yeah.
Same with
Buffy, yeah.
So these are your panelists. Let's start off talking about what you feel about the current state of pop culture. I mean, how has, you had mentioned actually the nerd culture. How, when did you see that becoming more mainstream? What was the trigger you felt?
I think the internet really has played a large part in culture. I mean, I remember growing up and being into certain things, and your fan base or your friends that were into that was basically the people in your neighborhood that liked that same thing or not. And sometimes you got lucky, and sometimes you didn't, depending on what the pop culture thing was. Whereas now, there's full websites, forums, fan fiction, videos, reviews, and so many different things. And then events. I mean, the fact that not only just comic conventions or geek conventions, that specific shows or movies can have their own convention nowadays.
Power Morphicon?
Power Morphicon, for there's a Power Rangers convention. There's a
5-season show.
A 5-season show. I think there's a Transformers convention I think that's coming up. The ponies, of course, have a convention. There's all kinds of different things. So I think that connection has helped a lot of people be able to enjoy a certain fandom no matter where they are. And I think that's a very fascinating thing.
Anyone else?
Well, the internet is really what it's all about. Right now, the younger generation, you guys, some of them, that's where this is sort of going to be a very bold, sort of broad statement, but I do think it is true. That's going to be today's Aristotle and Plato and these sort of great thinker people. That's where they're coming from. That's where they're going to come from. You're going to see them on the internet. It's going to be some kid or young adult or whatever at home telling you what he thinks and laying down some seriously deep shit on you. Now there is a lot of stuff on the internet, obviously, that's just mindless blather, but if you can sift through it, there's a lot of extremely intelligent thought out there and philosophy and all of that. And that's what, honestly, the sort of philosophers and thinkers of today, that's where they're coming from. They are coming from pop culture. From people who are on more mainstream television, people like Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart and all that, right, and down to people like you know? And that is something that's going to be very important and very significant. And I think it's also something that's very inspiring for kids at home, because they look at this and it's not like, oh, I need to be famous in a Hollywood studio and all this. All I need is something to talk about, something you care about, and a computer.
And passion.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's it is pretty fascinating, and that's also where pop culture, in terms of the materials that we're all talking about, things that are being worked on, that's where they're mining it from now, are these things on the internet, where people are able to get their ideas out there, get a following, and then all of a sudden, kaboom. So, yeah.
Yeah, not to sound like a broken record, but the internet's it. If you had to like break down the greatest achievements of the human race through the entirety of history, you know, like the written word and communication, mail, right, and the wheel and automobiles, you know,
Yeah.
and things like that, and the telephone, and then you get to like the internet. I mean, like the internet is probably the biggest of them all.
And according to the internet, the other greatest things would be bacon, cats,
Cat videos.
right? Yeah, so.
Probably porn.
Yeah.
And taking pictures and writing text on top of them.
Yep, there you go.
I'd also like to add in that, as Andre mentioned, conventions, meetups and stuff like that is pretty big, because when you stop and look at it, things like YomaCon started off really small, and then friends talk about it and word of mouth. Now, originally it was the nerds and stuff going to these, excited, enjoying their passion, but other people are hearing, that's fun? And so they come and see for themselves, and they're like, these people are actually living, and they join in. There's so many people have found their fandoms because of friends saying, hey, you gotta see this big event going on in town. And the conventions being listed on the internet has brought even more people together, making these events astounding, huge. San Diego Comic-Con is mind-blowing. So when you stop and look at this, there is a lot going on just in word of mouth of people getting out there and seeing what we can do.
I think that that's absolutely right, because it attributes, I think, to the biggest thing, which is community, right? None of us would be who we are and love the things we do without the other people around us that do them. And conventions, the internet, makes communities out of people that would have never known or seen each other before, and nevertheless enough to know that they have the same passion to talk about, discuss, and be a part of. So I think that is all part of the heart of the community that is the pop culture we love.
Yeah, I worked for a company back in the day. It's called Central Park Media. Anybody heard of them ever? No, you're all too young. Central Park Media was, yeah, I know.
Get off my lawn.
Back in my day, we had Central Park Media. Central Park Media was an anime licensing and distributing company that I think was founded in 1990, so they were one of the first to really start to get into that. And I started working there, I worked there like 2000 to 2004. And their mission statement was world peace through shared popular culture, which is pretty heavy, because that is something that it is this unifying thing. And you say creating a community, but creating this worldwide community, because I like to joke with people about, like, you know, with Pokemon stuff, that you could go to some little village in the middle of Africa where they speak the click language and hold up a picture of Pikachu, and they're probably going to be like, you know, Pikachu, you know, and then so and it's something that can really unite people. I also do think it is something where hopefully the young people who are into these things, as they grow older, become the leaders of society. Don't forget about that community and that how we're all more or less the same, and that will then sort of permeate itself into more of a world collective, so we start feeling more like, I mean, this is all sort of hippie bullshit a little bit, but it's starting to feel more like one planet as opposed to, 145 countries or whatever.
It's only hippie bullshit because it's coming from a man with long hair.
Yeah, I'm
wearing indoor sunglasses.
That's true. I'm hungover, but I just want you to know I'm not a hippie. I'm metal, and I stomp hippie ass. So anyway.
Well put, Tom. Well put.
Thank you.
All right. Well, seeing how it's come forward, we were talking about geek and nerd culture. How do you think it has influenced what we would refer to as mainstream culture in terms of music, movies, literature, things that have...
The easy example
Television.
is the uprise in comic book movies starting in the early 2000s when back-to-back Spider-Man and X-Men came out, and that was like whoosh, the box office receipts, and then everyone's picking up comic book properties, and for the most part, most of them have been pretty successful, if not knocked out of the park.
Most of the Marvel ones have been successful.
Yes, that's,
I know.
But the realities of that is true. Is it brought something that typically most people would have used to think the comic book, people that love comic books are complete nerds and geeks, and they kind of separate themselves. They segregated that culture from themselves. But now it's come full circle. People, the normals, now love Avengers. They love Spider-Man, and so now they're on the same page as us.
Yeah.
Coming back to the community thing, now they're like, oh well, now I have something in common with long-haired hippies that love comic books and movies, and now we're starting to come together and bring that heart of all of us loving the same things to the same place. I think that's an important part.
Yeah.
I remember going to see Batman Begins, like a midnight screening of it, and it was nerd fest. It was like Bat fans and it was like no, it's okay. But yeah, it was like hardcore comic book fans, Batman fans. Everyone had the Batman T-shirts on and stuff like that. It felt like an old school convention. And I remember going to see Captain America, the new one, the Winter Soldier, the weekend it opened. Completely different. It was like all young girls and young, just completely. They had all the shirts, they had all the shields and everything. And it was just. I remember just stopping and going like, "Wow,
Cosplay
this has changed."
Introduce yourself.
Oh yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Crows from the band Random Gibberish. We do a lot of pop culture, geeky comedy and stuff, and we do random stuff on the internet. But I was about to chime in with this, that it seems like cosplaying at movie premieres across the country is now a totally thing. I mean, before it was just a thing with, Star Wars and stuff, but now we see it every year. There's a new Iron Man movie, there's a new Marvel movie, and you see completely decked out in these really elaborate costumes. And I think that's a really, really awesome evolution of the culture.
I'd like to point out something that shows the evolution to why geekdom is also becoming popular is who's making all these comic book and cartoon remakes right now? The geeks of the past who went and became successful. They control the entertainment industry for the most part. We're seeing a lot of stuff like the Smurfs are coming back. We see all these old shows, Gem.
Yes.
So the geeks went out there and made themselves available to say, hey, we still love these entertainment franchises and we want to see them go on. And other people are seeing them come back and going, oh yeah, I like that as a kid, and it's bringing back the love and nostalgia, which is teaching the new generation, if you want to see your fandom continue, you have to become successful. And it does work. Fans can make differences.
Yeah. Now there is a dark side to that.
There is actually.
A couple of movie studios have proven if your villain is a cloud, you're done.
What would you say the dark side?
Well, yes, you do have people who come into these studios and these rooms and go, hey, I grew up on these various properties and I want to make a movie out of that. But then you still have a lot of people in charge who are much older and who do not grow up on these properties, and they just see it as a cash cow. And so what ends up happening is that you get something on the screen that is nowhere close to what you expect.
So what site?
Hold on, what was that?
Episode 1 and 2.
Well, for example, you mentioned Smurfs, for example. Smurfs is having a very interesting time, which I know is the weirdest thing to use as an example, but I'm a big Smurfs fan, and the Smurfs, they're set in the medieval times. We just had the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It seems to make perfect sense. Hey, let's make a Smurfs movie in their time. Yes, we'll make it CGI or whatever, but...
Action epic, you know.
Yeah, it's an action epic with these characters.
Neil Patrick Harris.
Well, that's what the studio says. They're like, no, those chipmunks made so much money by being little CGI characters running around in the real world, so let's do the same thing to Smurfs. Let's have them say things like, what the Smurf, yo. And
Let's
like
have Katy Perry be, you know,
Katy
Smurfette.
Perry be Smurfette, which is like the least problem. So it was this weird thing. And then what makes it worse is that the first one made so much money. So you couldn't even argue that it was a bad idea because it made so much. But then once we got around the second one, and it was like, oh, okay, we're not falling for this twice, and they realized that formula wasn't working. Now they're deciding to go back and reboot it again and make it as a full-on CGI film. And now it's going to be like the cartoon.
Well, when you talk about it being a good idea, you do have to sort of separate, though, is it, like, let's say, artistically or creatively a good idea versus financially a good idea? Because the other thing is, you know, the film business, it is, you know, a business, and that's, you know, that is what it's all about.
Absolutely.
But, you know, and it is also hard, you know, you can't make really blanket statements about creativity too much. Well, is that creatively a good idea? There are probably plenty of people, young children, who saw that movie and went, this was great, it was fun. As a parent of young kids, I tend to judge, well, I can judge movies I see with them more through their eyes, you know? So I'll sit down with them and watch a movie, and if they have a great time watching it, then I really like it. So let's like Green Lantern. You guys saw Green Lantern, right? Green Lantern is not a good movie, but my kids saw it and had fun, and just sit on it for a minute there, dude. You know, and Patsy, but it
Wow, showing your age
I
there.
know, right? but they, but you know, they had a good time and they watched it, and it made them a little more interested in comics. And I'm like, well, I have, you know, a few hundred Green Lanterns in the closet. If you know, you want me to break them out so you can read them, and so that was good for me. You know, it isn't a great film, and there are things that me being a fan of that character and whatnot, that I would have liked to have seen done differently, but they enjoyed it. So therefore, I enjoyed that experience, had a good time with my kids, and it made them, you know, it got them interested in it. So there are merits on that end of it too. You know what I mean? Man of Steel, on the other hand, I had to like sit them all down and go, no, Superman would never do something like that. Did you all understand? But, you know.
We have to have a very serious talk. No, it's not about sex. Listen, Superman would never do.
Now, there's also another dark side to it. When fans get when fans get in the creative process too much and want to basically remake the entire movie again. I'm looking at you, J.J. Abrams, with Into Darkness.
Is he here?
No, I'm pointing at
You!
J.J. Abrams.
I just imagine going, oh, he caught me! And just like running on the
I knew J.J. Abrams was a camera the whole time and explained the lens flares.
Touche. But
I believe it's pronounced touchy.
But anyway, I do think that there's also a problem on the other end where, you know, you have fans that are too fanish with getting into recreating these series that, you know, you have to make these series stand on their own, but not take them too much out of their element. So there is a nice balance that you need to achieve there. And I think J.J. Abrams goes the other way a bit too much sometimes.
Yeah, as long as the heart of it is there. Yeah, I mean, you obviously got to modernize things for a new time, a new period, but as long as the origin, the heart of what made that series a success or what made people into it stands.
And this is a
Appreciate it.
good area where Ninja Turtle stands out with that, because every series, 3 different cartoon series now, all of them stand on their own legs, but all of them hold true to who the Turtles are.
I agree with that.
But let me ask you, you mentioned the business aspect of it. Do we find that the creative process going on right now, be it comic books, or, you know, all of these things that are being drawn on to create films or television, or that, do you feel that some of that creative process is now being done with that intention in mind? That, for example, a comic book creator is sitting down creating a series with in mind that this is going to be optioned for a movie.
Yes.
Or
Yeah,
we're going
absolutely.
to design this for a television
as someone
series.
who works
But
on-
does that detract?
Well, as
What's going on
somebody
as
who works
well?
on anime, like, you know, anime, a lot of stuff was made just for Japan, you know? And then Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, things like that hit and became this international success and making immense amounts of money, things were then made with, more with the international market in mind, and even those shows sort of changed certain aspects of them. They made things a little more international on purpose, knowing that that's where it was going to go. Everybody wanted their show to be the next Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever, so they tried to make them more internationally accessible in certain ways. And I mean,
but even using your anime example, so many shows such as Yu-Gi-Oh and Beyblade and all of this that are designed with the game competition systems, card systems, is that detracting from the actual anime itself?
Well, hang on a second. Those things are all the money is in stuff. Okay, so it's all the money is in stuff. Okay, so you don't make your money so much with the show as the show sells the stuff. So they are succeeding in their goal of making a commercial that's 22 minutes long and entertaining for kids, and it sells the stuff. So that's is it cheapen the medium? Maybe, but what was the goal when they set out to do it? And it was to sell toys.
Yeah, there's been cases of like #1 rated, highly rated television shows being canceled just because their toy line didn't sell as well, or the company that made the show wasn't making enough money because another company owned the toy rights. Like those things have happened.
But you see people, for example, like Mark Millar, whose comic book properties are continually optioned for films, even before he's written them.
Yeah.
So now, do you feel that cheapens the property itself, knowing that, oh, well, hell, it's been optioned for a movie, I've got to write it with that intent in mind?
Oh, well, the same thing's happened with books. I mean, after Twilight and all that stuff, you're seeing a lot of young adult novels that are being written just for the purpose of, we hope this isn't now becomes a book series.
Divergent.
And as a series, no less, not just singular books, because if they make a series, then each book could be a movie.
And the last book always has to be split into 2 parts.
Ever since Harry Potter.
Unless you're the Hobbit, when you're stuck in 3 parts for no reason.
Harry Potter was significant, but I think Twilight is the more significant of that, and also like sort of dumbed it down to the most extraordinary degree possible. And yet, now how many of you guys went and saw Twilight and paid to see it?
I don't see it.
Yeah, sure. But listen, again, it's entertainment. If you went and saw it, you had fun, it's okay, and you don't ever have to be, and this is part of, I think, the pop culture, the mutual respect thing that we go for, is don't be ashamed for a thing that you find entertaining.
Totally agree on
Yeah,
that.
but like, you know what? No, you found it. Listen, one of my favorite movies when I was a kid, 7 years old, I guess 1980 or whatever, Flash Gordon. And let me tell you, Flash Gordon is just laughably dumb in so many ways, but I love it.
Yes.
And, because it hit me at the right time. I saw that when I was an impressionable kid, and I was just like, this is so neat. And the soundtrack blew my mind.
Flash!
Yeah.
Oh!
Exactly. So, Savior of the But, so you don't be ashamed for anything that, you know what I mean? If you saw some movie and the rest of the world hates it and you liked it, that's cool, man. It's all right.
Super Mario Brothers.
Yes. I stand by it. Super Mario Brothers is actually a good film. It's a good popcorn flick, even though it doesn't relate to the stuff. They create this own universe, and it makes for a very, very fun, entertaining flick. And yeah, shame on anyone who says it's a horrible movie and no one should watch it.
Unless you're a fan of Double Dragon, then it's just your thing. You should be embarrassed.
May I remind you, by the way, the Super Mario Brothers movie has like a sizable award-winning cast.
I know.
It has Fisher
Oscar
Stevens.
winners.
Yeah, Oscars. Fisher Stevens, Bob Hoskins, John
Leguizamo, yeah.
Dennis Hopper.
Yeah, like that movie has a surprisingly impressive cast.
And yet.
No, that was the same thing I was saying with Flash Gordon. It was the same thing. There are multiple Oscar winners in that. Max von Sydow and Chaim Topol.
Yes,
those guys all have Oscars. Yeah. So.
None for Leo, no, none for DiCaprio.
And, I mean, referencing that comic book or those type of movies now, you're seeing a lot of A-list actors who are doing that. And again, is it something where you feel the casting is appropriate, or they're doing it to get themselves into a franchise, or we had, when Star Wars came out, all of a sudden these actors in this small film that they didn't expect to do well became iconic figures for the rest of pop culture history. Do you feel that these actors are trying to achieve the same thing?
It depends. Like, some actors would look at it, and I think these are more actors who've got a bit of a resume that I don't want to get pigeonholed as this one thing, the casting thing, because let me just quickly relate this to like animated movies, because I would get into it with other voice actors about they're all pissed off about like celebrities taking their jobs. And my feeling on that, honestly, is like cast the right person for the part. That person, don't tell me that Pixar doesn't know how to cast their movies. They really, really, really do. So, would The Incredibles have been better with a bunch of unknowns? No, it wouldn't have. They picked people who were perfect, and I will put it on my producer hat. If I'm casting this movie, and budget is really, it's Pixar, so budget isn't a thing, and I can cast this famous person versus this unknown person, and performance-wise, they are on par. They're either one. They're doing just as well. I'm going to go with the famous person because that may drive more people to the theater. If the other guy's performance is better, then he's going to get the part. And honestly, that is the way that they roll. They do celebrity casting, but they cast people very well.
Well, but even so, using your example of The Incredibles, do you find you're focusing away from the story by listening to Samuel L. Jackson as Frozone? Are you seeing that character as Samuel L. Jackson, or are you still seeing the character as
Samuel L.
Frozone?
Jackson gets cast to be Samuel L. Jackson.
That's actually a bad example. I know the question you're asking, but that's a bad example.
That was the intention with Frozone, that it's Samuel L. Jackson. But like nobody's
But
going.
no, the reason I use that
through.
example.
All I can think of is the piano, and
No, but the reason I use that example is because he was specifically cast to be Samuel L. Jackson. Does that pull you out of the film?
I think it really depends. Obviously, it depends a lot on the actor themselves and how much they put themselves into a role. I mean, obviously, when Ben Affleck was announced as Batman, there was a lot of discussion about that.
Everybody go see Argo, and you'll shut up about that.
Yeah.
I have complete confidence.
Yeah, but that's what I'm for.
What about the script?
But I think that was a big thing. My current argument about this statement, obviously, lately has been Megan Fox's April O'Neil in the new Ninja Turtles movie, which and my argument, like a lot of people, I have nothing against her. I think she's a great actress. I think she's fun or whatever. Listen to what I'm saying.
Give one example.
As an actress, she's fine. I mean,
what was the
I'm
one
not
that
talking about like she's going to win an Oscar or anything. I'm just saying, as a capable actress, she can do what she's told to do. I'm just saying, as a
slow motion.
Yes, you're
Bounce on a trampoline.
Open the hood of the car.
Let me point. But that's my thing. We don't see her as Megan Fox, the actress is going to play all these characters. We see her as Megan Fox, the celebrity symbol, she's with Michael Bay, and then they had the whole argument. And even with her announcement, it wasn't just, hey, Megan Fox will be April O'Neil. It was Michael Bay having to write on his blog, like, she is back, we're together again. And so what you get is the celebrity of it, more so than the actual person. So now when I watch that trailer, I don't see April O'Neil. I see Megan Fox in a yellow jumpsuit, or a yellow jacket. Yeah, against frog turtles. So I just,
and white businessman shrubber.
Right. So that's when it becomes a problem. And the same thing with the animated things. Like with Pixar, one of the things I'm always like is they do put out the character. They put out the Incredibles or whatever. And as much as I like a lot of them, like some of the DreamWorks, there are some DreamWorks movies where the biggest thing is just like, we've got these famous people people.
The
Will
crews.
Smith is a talking fish. You know,
You know, what that tells me when they have the celebrities is they don't believe in their own stories and characters when they're just casting for celebrity names. A lot of times they are casted right, where, as we've been saying, DreamWorks is really good, and a lot of theirs, as well as Pixar, but there are a lot of DreamWorks and many, many other companies where they're just after the name.
Correct.
And the Ninja
Yeah.
Turtle movie, especially the TMNT 2007 movie, we had Sarah Michelle Gellar as April O'Neil. They didn't just pick her as a voice actor and she had to play April. They switched April's character to match her.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, very much.
That was wrong.
Let me just repeat by saying I admit that Megan Fox can do her job as an actress.
You mean wash Michael Bay's car while he films it.
By no means am I saying like I want Megan Fox to win an Oscar for her reward winner performance as
Hey,
Harriet
I
Tubman.
enjoy Jennifer's body. Just saying.
Yeah.
Well, we all enjoy her body.
Yes.
But there's nothing else like above that. See, usually people at the neck, there's a head. There's no head up there. It's just
Hair.
tangible
Hair.
meringue pie of
Pretty eyes.
August 8th, everybody. August 8th.
I'll tell you what. Let's open up for a few questions from you guys here. Right here in the front. Stand up. What's your name? Kyle. All right, moving on. Now.
I would say to that.
It's not my fault. He saw Twilight. So no. What's your question?
Okay, well, seeing the new trailer and seeing the faces of the turtles, does that mean, do you think we have a new Battletoads movie now?
I want this Battletoads movie.
I want a Battletoads movie. I do.
They're working on a Battletoads movie, but they can't get past the third stage to finish the movie.
Michelle, did you talk to Matt King at all this weekend about turtle stuff?
Not really, no.
I think he was involved with some of the fight choreography in that movie.
Oh.
Matt really knows his stuff in terms of fights, and one thing he did give the fights like his seal of approval, and he knows what he's doing. And in a movie with the word ninja in the title, some well choreographed and shot fight scenes matter, so that at least is a potential bright spot for this thing.
There's the thing, there's ninja in the title. We're supposed to be stealthy, and when Leonardo lands on that building, it's not too stealthy.
I understand, but like honestly, them sort of sliding around in the shadows, being quick and quiet and unseen, boring movie. Them getting listen. You telling me you don't want to see like Bruce Lee fights with these turtles? That's one of the things in the live action movie. The way those guys could move in those suits blew my mind.
Yes,
You know,
totally.
and that's something that I want to see. Matt and I, that's how we know each other from college. We used to do fight stuff all the time. And, you know, in a movie like that, I want to see good fight choreography, you
I
know?
want to see him use nunchucks, not salamis.
Well, yeah, Turtles 2, they took the weapons away. That was sad.
There is
I'm sorry, Crows, but this is important to say before we get so far off track. Yes, the word ninja is in the title, and that should be representative of that. But so is turtles, not frogmen. So I think there should also be representative of that.
And it says teenage and mutant and the.
Yes.
There's not enough
The needs to be
They
properly
don't look
represented.
like teenagers.
Well, my thing about it all that is that you know, I can get past designs or whatever else. I just want the movie to be focused on them. I think one of the biggest problems of the Transformers franchise was that the Transformers were the sidekicks, you know?
Yeah.
In the Smurfs movie, the Smurfs were the sidekicks. I don't want this to be the April and Vernon Shredder movie with an occasional Ninja Turtle fight every now and then. They need to be front and center.
There's one thing I am looking forward to, at least with this new Ninja Turtles movie. That Vanilla Ice will finally have work again.
You got those mac and cheese?
That mac and cheese commercial. Have you guys seen the mac and cheese commercial?
Yes.
Because going into go again.
That's got nothing to do with the movie. That's the TV series.
Hey, still,
Truth, but still awesome.
you know how it happens.
That's another thing about movies that really irritates me. Everyone's excited about the movie coming to me. What do you think of the new movie coming out for like 3 years now? And I'm like, what about the awesome TV show that's right in front of us right now?
Yeah, it's
an
gonna be
amazing comic book. Hello. The movie's coming out in years from now. Let's talk about
But,
what's here
but
now.
maybe then the movie will serve to drive people towards that stuff.
The interest in the movie,
Yeah.
and the anticipation.
Yeah.
But now here's a question though. Bad movie, good TV show. Do you think the movie will drive people away from the TV show? I mean, we saw that with Transformers Prime and, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen came out. Even though the Hub put out this brand new awesome Transformers animated series that was really, really good. And shame if you guys haven't watched it yet. It's on Netflix right now. God, I'm such a chill. But no, I think how the movie did, the second movie, Revenge of the Fallen, basically pushed people so much away from anything Transformers that they didn't want to touch even the animated series, despite being completely disconnected.
Well, case in point.
It wasn't marketed towards kids, which it could have been more, because kids who go see this Ninja Turtle movie are more likely to get more interested in the other stuff. Adults with their preconceived notions and all these things who are like wanting to see their 1984 Turtles or whatever, that's a different thing, but that's not the market that they're chasing as much. I mean, putting Megan Fox in the movie obviously means they're trying to get some older, get teens or young adults.
The dads. I mean, yeah.
Well, yeah. But honestly, as a dad, like that would just be gravy for there to be eye candy in the movie, but it's not like I'm going to send my 5-year-old by himself because there's no boobs in it.
But case in point, though, for the point that you had made, remembering that when the movie Batman and Robin came out, we saw drops in the sales of all the Batman comic books.
And we lost the animated series, which was going strong at the time.
Yes.
But we did get bat nipples, so that's an outcome. So, win-win, right? That's
Got
the
Batgirl nipples. Alicia Silverstone.
Hers did not. No, it doesn't. Yeah, they gave it to the men and just neglected the one suit that would have benefited, I think, for the target audience.
Quality, guys.
I think it's the one line that sums up all the bad comic book movies. Suit me up, Uncle Alfred. Yeah, really, just no. But let's go to another question out here. Let's see, from the back. Come up here. Yeah. It doesn't reach. What's your name?
My name is Andrew, and I have a question about this industry as a whole. Do you think in the next few years it will be growing more, or is it actually shrinking? Because I see like the popularity of these pop culture film and media is growing, but at the same time, like for example, because of piracy, DVD sales are down. Sure, there's Netflix and stuff, but that's not actually compensating enough.
That's why DVD sales are down. Nobody. The only people who are going to have DVDs are collectors who have to have stuff.
Yeah.
But DVD sales aren't down because of declining popularity. It's the medium itself is becoming
but that
a
really
dinosaur.
cuts down their margins. And then the other thing is like also say toys and merchandise, the stuff and stuff like that. Toy industry is also shrinking every year now, but they're getting eaten up by the video games and stuff like that now. So like, yes, it's getting more popular, but at the same time, the money is it shrinking or is it growing in that sense?
I think just an industry change overall as we're going towards new mediums for a lot of this stuff. We're seeing a lot of kids go for iPads, iPhones and stuff, and getting those, apps with all these, licensed characters in it. And, it's going more away from the traditional toys, just like, TV channels and stuff on cable is slowly shrinking away and giving way to Hulu and Netflix and this stuff. So I think it's less of a growing or shrinking thing and more about an adaptation to the next stage of media.
Well, I also think you're seeing the difference in toy sales because as opposed to when we were kids, and toys were designed to be playable, now they're designed to be collectible.
Yeah.
So it limits the market.
Now, I went to a Mattel panel at Toy Fair this year, and they were doing charts showing the sales and the differences since the new medias have come out, and showed that their actual toy sales have not really changed too much, and that a lot of their kid toys and stuff are all still selling. And I got the video actually up on cowabungacorner.com where you guys can see the charts, that it is still out there. It's just that there's also this other media, and the parents are trying to decide where to spend their money. And both of them are actually still selling.
And I'm sure the economy has something to do with it too, since the
Yeah.
recession, I'm sure that so today's numbers, and probably for the past like 5 years or so, are seeing some minor decline at least just because people are forced to be a little more frugal with their money.
Especially this inflation even in toys. I mean, even the regular Transformer toys are now $15. I mean, it's grown so much within the past 10 years, and especially then we had this recession come in, or a lack of money, then yeah.
Guys, I have to roll. I gotta go catch a plane. It was a lot of fun hanging out with you this weekend, so thank you very much. Crows, you are the me now, so, you know, you have to get, exactly. Right,
Dash hippies and...
yeah, you gotta be the crusty old man up here, all right?
Thank you for joining us, Tom.
I said, what do you, well, you know, I'll for you, I'll give you my, jammer head, you know, so. Use fungoids, I gotta get out of here, I'll see y'all later.
Safe flight.
Let's see, let's get another question while we're changing over here. Anyone at all? Could be just, oh, I didn't even see you.
Yeah.
Come here, the lady with the face, come on down.
That's me.
What's your name?
My name's Hannah.
And go right ahead.
My question kind of pertains to hype surrounding certain things, and the one I'm going to use in particular is Frozen, because it's the only thing that can come to mind. A lot of people promoted, like, Let It Go on their channels, or were just like, look at this song from this new movie, and it created this massive hype around the song, and that kind of made people go to see the movie, and sort of in the similar way, the Snowman had a lot of hype created around it in the trailers, because the trailers didn't show a lot of the story, it showed a lot of the snowman. Do you think that that's kind of like a misdirection kind of thing, or do you think that's just trying to get people to want to go see it even if they don't really know what they're seeing?
I want to chime in first real quick because I have a very specific story directed to this. At Riot Games, they do no hype of anything because it will bite you in the ass really bad. They had an incident about a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago, something when Dominion came out. But before Dominion came out, they were going to tease it. So a bunch of rioters got on their Twitter accounts and tweeted about, oh, this is an exciting thing coming, we're all excited about, we've all been working real hard. The fan base got into an uproar, oh my God, what's coming? And all that came out the day that they were talking about was a trailer for Dominion. And it was a huge letdown to the community. And that is an example of a big worldwide example of hyping something that sets people's expectations very high, because you can't control, when you say something's great, you can't control what the consumer thinks their expectations are. So when you release what it is, it might be great and they might agree, or you might have just disappointed a shit ton of people by mistake. So.
And that happens a lot with the marketing aspect of these things. Like these companies for movies and stuff will purposely put out a hype trailer to the audience, and sometimes it can go horribly wrong. I mean, they started teasing Ninja Turtles a while back, and even the hype trailers got, blasted, completely.
It was
Well, to the extent they actually went back and restructured the story.
They did, which, that the hype trailer actually, towards the fans, really did help them get a view on what the fan base does think of these things. So yes, I think hype, especially studios being involved in inflation for hype, can be both a good thing and a bad thing.
And for them, it's word of mouth. By doing the hype that they did, where Michael Bay said the turtles are from an alien race, that 15-second clip reached out to so many people that it got people excited about their movie 2 years earlier. And excited, mad, whatever it is, good press is bad press, it all gets around and gets people interested in what's going on.
Well, then let me ask, do you think they did something of that sort deliberately, just to stir things up?
Yes.
Oh yeah, that happens
Yes.
a lot.
And I think we're going through that right now with a few other things. There was some April Fool's pranks played online, and I think one of them has definitely been called out as a prank, where they were saying they were pushing the movie back. The other one has not been called out yet, but it also has not been confirmed, where they're changing voice actors. And everyone's still talking about this voice actor change, but the studios are not coming out and saying, yes, this is true. So we're all sitting here going, was this somebody's prank and they're enjoying that it's still running? Or is this real and the studios are just not confirming it?
Or do you not confirm so that you're still talking about the movie that the studio wants you to talk about? That's a lot of times why
Right.
people do that, is because that'll happen. But in the case of Frozen, I remember having a discussion about this because I thought it was a very interesting case. You know, in my personal opinion, they obviously put the snowman front and center because Disney is really nervous about princess movies. You know, when Princess and the Frog did not do as well as they were hoping, there is still this stigma that boys will not go see a Disney movie if it's about a princess. So what do? You put your comic relief character front and center. Then the movie comes out, and all this word of mouth hype gets behind the two princesses, the way that the princesses are different, the song itself, and then it became this thing that where now everybody wanted to see it for that reason. And it just kind of shows that sometimes that personal hype can really help, and people can get behind that because it is coming from fans. But it is those types of things that studios are a little bit nervous about because they want to make sure they tap into the best possible. Did anyone see? I'm blanking on the movie, but there was a short that they showed before. Peabody and Sherman.
Yes.
The short that they showed before that was like the alien things. So it was like the little aliens. They were like looking for a planet to live on.
Yeah.
That's actually a promotion for a movie that's coming up. And I remember a lot of people going like, it's okay, whatever, it's no big deal. But they recently announced the movie, and one of the big things about the movie is that those aliens are coming to Earth and befriend a little girl who's going to be an African-American female. And then all this positive hype came from the movie just from that statement. So they had this 5-minute short before a movie, and they were like, hey, whatever. But then they announced, hey, a black girl's going to be in the lead of it. And now it's getting all this positive press because it's like, wow, that's different. That's something different. So it's amazing how we as people can kind of sometimes show, look, we accept different. We're good with that. You know, let's have it.
It's funny what Disney did for Frozen, because they also pulled the same thing with Tangled, with, you know, they put the Flynn Rider front and center for all the trailers and stuff, and everyone was like, man, these trailers looks kind of crappy and
Who
stuff.
wasn't in the movie originally? After the Frog, they went back.
They basically did a whole restructuring of Tangled for a bit, and also, but see, then when it came to Wreck-It Ralph, right off the gate, they knew what they had. They're like, we're putting Bowser in the trailer, we're throwing M. Bison in the trailer. We know who we're speaking to here with this trailer. And it's, when you look at that and you see, okay, the studio was definitely very assured compared to something they're not sure if how people will react, and thus the misdirection happens. So.
I think I actually didn't, as a video game developer and someone who loves the history and world of video games, I got asked constantly, oh, did you see Wreck-It Ralph? What did you think? I didn't like it. And the reason being is bait and switch. All those trailers, they used M. Bison, Bowser, and the scene with Sonic and all these advertisements you go to, right? And when you go see the movie, it's like, imagine that you got promised a panel of really impressive people, right? But then you just get us. And then like one impressive person, like Tom, shows up for like 2 minutes and leaves, right? You feel like gypped, but the whole time you were promised really great stuff. Like, does anyone here know Food Fight? Alright. The poster of the movie Food Fight, do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Where it's got all the emblems and the actual main characters of the movie who actually are in the background. And it's the same thing. I feel like Wreck-It Ralph promised us this movie with all these great game characters only to be relegated to these little quick, like 2-second jokes.
Cameos. Just background.
But hold on about that. And Roger Rabbit also did the same thing back in the day, and yet it still was a good movie itself. So were you as angry at Roger Rabbit?
Well, at the same time, though, the trailers, the advertisements, all of those did not promote the movie as, oh, it's a Bugs Bunny Mickey Mouse film.
Well, actually, some of the trailers did have that.
They did, but throughout the whole thing, because I remember being part of all that, was the fact that it was about Roger Rabbit, it was about Bob Hoskins.
Right.
That's true.
And you got the news that came out that, wow, these two studios, Warner Brothers and Disney, agreed to let their characters appear together.
I don't, and the point of this is just I don't like bait and switches. Does anybody remember the movie Cable Guy with Jim Carrey?
Yes.
The trailers for that movie made it look like Dumb and Dumber and The Mask, right? They made him look goofy Jim Carrey, come have a good time, and you go see that movie and you're like, this is not that
creepy.
It was a very dark
Just
film.
pointing out, I hate bait and switches.
Well, okay, let me switch for a minute then. Let me ask you this. With a lot of these properties coming back, you know, we see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles constantly being updated, Transformers, the Muppets coming back. How are they taking these properties that were popular in the 70s, in the 80s, you know, totally different societal norms going on, different ways of thinking, even the original cartoons or films when you watch them are much more simplistic, you might say. and how do you bring them to be relevant to today in a world that's much more digitally connected, the internet, all of these things, taking these more simplistic properties such as even the Muppets and making them relevant to connect for today?
I think one of the biggest things I've noticed just across the board is gender and race. That is a big issue because you're dealing with a lot of properties that we're not really thinking that much about these things. I mean, I remember the 80s it used to be called the Smurfette situation where you just had that one character that was pink, and that was it. That's for the girls. And so it's interesting. I know this is a weird example, but I even remember when I went to see the first Scooby-Doo movie, and all of a sudden Daphne knew kung fu, and it was just because it was like we had to make her more than just a damsel in distress. It's like you see those things happen, and of course we're seeing different characters, that pop culture characters changing race, changing gender, changing sexuality. It's like you can see how the little snippets of what exactly are we allowed to touch and change just enough to where people don't get angry. But of course it's the internet, so no matter what.
They're also not treading the line as much about the racist areas because back in the day, Baxter Stockman, originally in the comics, was black. And then in the original cartoon series, they were worried Bebop's already black. Their only other black guy inside the show was Baxter Stockman. We got to turn him white. So
yeah, but then you see like Transformers too.
Oh no, we're not speaking of those robots.
Are we talking about?
I didn't see
we talking about butt flapping skis?
You sure got a lot of junk in your trunk.
Oh yeah, right. That Megatron was still cool beyond.
Cruz actually felt physical pain off of that.
I don't know what race they were trying to be. But
Then again, how do you bring them? Even video games, because we constantly see updates from former video game properties.
I think it also has to do bringing them in. Yeah, it's true. I think a lot of this, we've seen a lot more character interaction and character interplay between, these vastly different personalities that these characters originally had, but we never got them really delving into each of their individual personalities by interacting with all these other characters. They just were one notes, and now we're actually fully diving into things. Like Castlevania, you mentioned, with the new Lords of Shadow. I know some people don't like it. I personally love the story. I don't love the gameplay that much, but you have this really, really interesting story that really delves into the origin of Dracula and what's going on with that, and especially how his relationships turned him into what he became.
one of the things I want to point out is that when we update properties and bring them back from the past, there isn't always a need to make them current. So, for example, Double Dragon Neon, right, is a remake, is an HD remake of Double Dragon, still set in the 80s with an 80s style soundtrack. You know, sometimes you don't need to update it. In fact, one of the things we're talking to my wife about, what we kind of were hoping or expecting from Gem and the Holograms, the movie, is I hope they leave it in the 80s. I hope the movie takes, and they take the full advantage of set pieces and costumes to really go over the top in sort of a That 70s Show kind of way.
Full throwback?
Yeah, full throwback, just go nuts. I hope they're doing that. I don't know if they are, and they're probably not, but if they did, they could at least have fun with the fact that it's set in a time frame and go, yeah, just full throwback, over the top, make a ton of 80s jokes, you know, they could even pick up a phone and say, who are you gonna call, and just stuff where you can, but they won't, they'll do what the Smurfs did.
Or even Josie and the Pussycats did.
Well, Josie and the Pussycats did smart. They did it by parodying.
That is true. That is a way of doing it.
Now, another thing that they take into consideration when bringing shows back and changing things up is we learn differently. We learn different than the kids of nowadays. Kids are starting at a very young age playing on iPads, cell phones, computers. They're more into the stories. And so now they're making these children cartoons more in depth to where when we were younger, these were like the 11 to the 13, 14-year-olds, and now 5 to 8-year-olds are getting the same stories we would have got later.
Well, I think it's also that, you know, as you said, they're more intelligent, more savvy. They know when they're being condescended to.
Yeah.
And I have a 3-year-old son, and even the shows that he are at his level that he watches are more advanced story-wise or character-wise or even educational-wise than the stories and cartoons that, you know, I had back in 1912.
Well, I think as time has gone on, like, there's definitely drastic increase in characterization storyline from even the 80s to the 90s. Because in the 90s, we were really starting to see fully developed ongoing storylines like Pirates of Dark Water, which just hit DVD, I found out.
Gargoyles.
Gargoyles.
Yeah, Gargoyles, great show. And, you know, even stuff like Batman, the animated series. Yeah, all that stuff. We started getting more in-depth stuff starting in the 90s, and now we're just up to a progression that we're having these really in-depth, intelligent stories, Young Justice and Green Lantern.
Too soon.
Yeah, too soon.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Crows. I mean, there were a lot of magnum opus of really creative stuff that didn't talk down to kids, like Intelligent Wit of Street Sharks and Biker Mice from Mars. I can't keep a straight.
Dino Saucers.
Ninja Turtles. Dino Riders.
Oh, no. Cadillacs and dinosaurs.
Very creative. Sorry, I couldn't help it.
No, it's okay.
Because Street Sharks were jawsome.
The great thing is, even with all these in-depth cartoons out there, we have the cartoons that are not for the people who want that long story arc. Like back in the 90s, we had shows like Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, Freakazoid, where it was these short cartoons just to make people laugh. These days, we got things like Adventure Time and the regular show that's got kids just going on TV to laugh. So while they're going,
I'd like to add though.
Oh,
That
Come
Adventure
here.
Time. Okay, but I want to add like Adventure Time.
Wait, I just like how she interjected. I do. So if that's the case, okay, here, grab a seat. There we go.
I was gonna say that, like things with Adventure Time, it starts out as silly or whatever, but now it's getting in depth, and there's a big long storyline going on, and then with the comics, along with the comics, it's really deep and interesting, and it's not just for kids. Older people are getting into it, and they're enjoying it as well. I want to say with the recent storyline with Finn losing his arm and everything. Spoiler alert for anybody who has to see that.
Wait.
Spoiler
I'm sorry.
alert!
But it's okay because they do allude to this. They do allude to this happening several times during the series, and not just with Finn. They introduce another character who also is missing an arm. But
Wait, is that the character that they've talked about in press things that's related to Finn?
Shoko?
No, they're introducing his father now.
Well, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I haven't seen it, so I'm behind.
I'm very behind.
But no, I was gonna say that Adventure Time does have those themes where it's not just for kids. There's also something there for an older audience, that grew up on shows from the 90s and the 80s, and they can enjoy it as well. As a regular show, they also make a lot of 80s
Yeah, regular
references.
show is so 80s, it's amazing.
I never said they didn't make references adults can enjoy. I was saying that they have stories shorter that kids can really latch onto if they're like ADHD and stuff. They attach to different types of fandoms.
Yeah.
I don't like I think Adventure Time is great. I really enjoyed the original cartoon. I think the series is pretty strong. But Adventure Time has kickstarted this thing now where like cartoons don't have to make a lot of sense and jokes can be just random. And he has like the Breadwinners on Nickelodeon. I don't like regular show for the same reason. It just kickstarted this idea that all we have to do is throw random crap that makes no sense at the screen and kids will just eat it up.
So it's like Seinfeld.
Yeah, it's a very ADHD sort of.
Yeah, but
just a personal opinion.
But that I think even back to like Ren and Stimpy though. I remember cartoons trying to do that when Ren and Stimpy was real successful. Of just like let's just get very.
That was the very 90s section of later 90s.
Yeah.
We really got into the let's just have random cartoons, whatever, and wild, loud, and it doesn't have to make much sense.
But even those were almost like in honor of the cartoons that were back in the 30s and 40s of these same characters, different situations.
Hold on. Shay, are you wearing a slap bracelet?
I got tagged by two beautiful women who said I couldn't take it off.
Okay, that's
Fair enough.
There you go.
Speaking of, as a pop culture panel, you didn't bring up you're wearing a slap bracelet? Okay, there we go.
Now I feel like he's a trapper keeper or something.
I have three of them on. You can only see one. No, it's on Beagle. All right, but so we covered that. Let me get another question here from the audience. No, you had a turn at yours.
No, I actually didn't have a question though.
We can only have so many black nerds up here at once.
No, you can't. No, you. come here.
I just became the Michael B. Jordan of this panel.
Anyways,
Introduce yourself.
Damn, you just got told.
I made her get up.
Yeah, I was like so comfortable. Anyways, alright, my question is, so you guys being all pop culture, what do you think, like the negative side effects come from it? Because me, I'm more of like an outsider, like this is my only first convention, I'm only here because my friend wanted to see Natasha Allegri, and I was like, usually when you're an outsider, you come in, you observe these people in costumes, and you're just like, you don't understand it that much. But my thing is like, I know some people get so deep into this community, this fandom, these fan fictions, that they get so set in their ways about, you get one mentality, and if someone doesn't agree with you in that mentality, like, they're obviously wrong or you can't be friends with them. And I would walk through high school and there would be people like standing in circles, like arguing for hours and hours. I'm pretty sure just about Dr. Who, which I don't watch. But like they would just be like screaming at each other, and I never understood why. So that was like, I see it here sometimes people just get so into this. So like, how deep is too deep into this like pop culture?
You don't watch a lot of politics then, because let me tell you something, it doesn't stop at geek culture. We're going to like a Democratic Republican convention, I promise you.
Religion.
And I will tell you what a Republican can say and what a Democrat. There's no, like, they're not surprised.
Yeah. Well, no, I think this is a good point. One of the things that I've just noticed recently, was particularly with the mainstreamness of nerd culture, is you're getting a lot of challenges now. Like growing up as a nerd, it was just like, oh, I'm a nerd, I'm into such and such or whatever. And now there's somehow this fictional mainstream list is starting to form of what it really means to be a nerd, and you start to get people who will challenge you because if you don't like the specific fandom that they like, and that's what makes them a nerd, then all of a sudden you're not one.
Or you don't agree with the storyline or something.
Yeah, it's something weird like that, and which is just a very weird thing. And so to me, it just seems odd that the people that were picked on are now picking on people because they don't like their specific thing.
We've seen a lot of that in news and media in reference to like fangirls.
Yeah. Well, even just with like all kinds of fandom, but yeah, you've seen a lot in that just in general.
In the 90s, this started up on the digital mailing list. Over and over, everywhere. You got the people going, if you don't like the Mirage comics, you're not a true fan because the Mirage comics created the Turtles. And then you have the people going, well, if you don't like the original cartoon series, then you're not a true fan because the original Turtles cartoons made the Turtles famous.
And they all sounded exactly like that.
It turns into this huge battle over the different areas. I'm one who loves all the different media, so they come and actually try to tell me I'm not a true fan because I like the other medias. I'm like, wait, I can keep up on a conversation on the media that you're talking about. So it's stupidity for me because we're all going through these different phases in our own lives. We all like different things. We all learn different things for different reasons on how we grew up. And outsiders coming in and seeing this is a different world for a lot of the people as they come in and witness how we have our cosplays or puppets or toys goofing around. But everyone has something, a different passion, something else they love. And they can relate on a different level if they look for it, from collecting stamps, being into sports, being into politics. Anything out there is a fandom. And this is just how we express ours without having to hide it. And a lot of areas, people feel like they gotta hide it outside of conventions because they don't want to be ridiculed or looked down, but here they can be open. For me, this is how I dress every day. I'm always in Turtles. I don't hide this, but I know a lot of people who do. And it's because they're scared of how they'll be treated outside. But going too far is when you take your fandom so serious that you get mad at other people how they live. If you want people to respect you for who you are, you gotta be able to give them the respect for who they are and why they like what they like. No fandom is greater than the other fandom. We're all equal.
It's the idea of using your fandom to judge others to make yourself feel superior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. That's
Articulated that well, Shay. Got a lot of experience there, buddy.
Not in school.
and share. if someone doesn't know your fandom, share. I've seen some people that
Share. I thought you were going to say you're a fan of Cher.
no.
Don't judge.
If I could turn back time.
I'm a fan of Cher Bear, okay? I'm a character. So, but yeah, like if there's something that you're into and you're like, hey, I don't know about this Doctor Who thing. What is up, you know? And I've seen people be like, well, you don't know, fine, and close off. It's like, no, open up, let that person know. Someone may end up loving the same thing that you love with a passion, but just never got that nice introduction to it. So.
I recently just went through this. Somebody was judging the 2003 Ninja Turtle series, saying that she didn't think she'd like it because it was too dark, too serious. I, within this last week and a half, brought her through the first season and a half, and she's loving the series because she actually sat down and took the time to watch it to see what it does have to offer.
All right, I'll tell you what, we have time for one more question. One more. One more question. Okay.
Okay. I was gonna do two questions, but I guess I'll give you guys one quick one. With all the reboot movies and everything coming out, what series, and this encompasses anything from video games, anime, comics, or whatever. What series would you like to be made into a movie?
Hey, you took my last question.
That's right, you told me earlier.
You're right here with me. All right.
So let's expand it out. It could be comics, could be video games, could be movies, television, film.
What would you like to see be rebooted that hasn't been, hasn't come back, hasn't made an appearance in a while, right?
Right.
Start at the end.
You got mine.
Oh, you're starting with me.
No, another one.
Okay, I would like to see, actually Gargoyles, because we just mentioned it earlier and that was one of my favorite shows in the 90s. I'd like to see them try and pick that one back up and see where they'd go with it.
Oh man, I'm like racing through my head right now. I'm trying to think.
Do you want him back to you?
I would.
He's still stuck on Cher.
I'm still stuck on Cher.
He's waiting for Cher to come back.
I want a gritty Christopher Nolan reboot of Care Bears.
Cher is actually due to regenerate any day now. So.
Buff bears just stare at everything. I want everyone in the city to care. You'll barely survive. They won't pause for anything. No,
in a world where love is not spread.
Just like Care Bear countdown.
And Mr. T's got to do a voice appearance.
A pit fool who don't care about anything. No, seriously, I don't know if this is possible. I honestly would love to see the Warner Brothers come back. I would love to see Animaniacs come back because they were so good at skewering pop culture and parody, and I think that with so much stuff we have nowadays, that they could really get their hands on. It'd be cool to see that again.
Look what they got away with then.
Yeah, especially with all the stuff the jokes they got away with.
Bring back the original voice cast with them.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a given, yeah.
Fingerprints.
Good night, folks.
I mean, my go-to that Crow certainly knows very well is Dino Riders, which was a 1980s franchise that I would very much like to give the rights to do a video game about. But if I had to choose, not Dino Riders, because he asked me to do a different one, I would say Freakazoid.
Oh.
Freakazoid was really good, but it was before its time. If it came out like 5 years later, I think it would have thrived.
Yeah. The political humor in that is insane going back and watching that. There's so many, very, very multi-layered jokes in that series, and it's just like, wow.
That whole show was a great parody of like mystical powered superheroes, and it was so smart. If you haven't watched that in a long time, by good God, go watch it. It is a really, the way that they don't just break the fourth wall in a way that's funny, they break the fourth wall in like a meta way, where he points out, not only do I know this is a TV show, but here, we're now going to show you a fake cartoon commercial for the toys of Freakazoid.
Do you know how Freakazoid started? Who originally created Freakazoid?
I assume it wasn't actually Steven Spielberg.
No, it was Bruce Timm. Originally, Freakazoid was being created as to be part of the DC animated universe.
Really?
And then, basically, Spielberg got together with Tim and wanted to create, an original superhero. And then somehow, because Spielberg wanted to make it very comedic, Tim, being the grizzled old Bruce Timm that he is, love you, Tim, he kind of stepped back and let Spielberg after designing the original stuff for Freakazoid. That's why originally the plot for Freakazoid, the chip, had very, very plot stuff in it. And then, you know, as the show went on, we lost that plot as more gave way to a lot more random adventures, a lot more kind of Animaniac style.
So Freakazoid is basically the Deadpool for the DC universe.
It was, and part of the reason for that was at the time the sudden popularity of Madman by Michael Howard, and DC wanted a character of that sort who was able to travel through the fourth wall, you know, to be in there.
Freakazoid was brilliant. That's the summary of what I'm saying.
Yeah, I fully agree. Now, the one series I would reboot, and I've actually, you know, written spec pilots for this. Rainbow Bright. I believe that Rainbow Bright could be done great and badass. There's so much possible lore there you can go into, and they created such a very, very interesting world with Rainbow Bright that you could really flesh it out and go crazy with today. And it's great, you know, property for both boys and girls. And I know normally companies are like, okay, is it blue or is it pink in terms of what the show is? But I think we're starting to see a lot of more cross, you know, gender shows coming out. I mean, look at My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. I mean, I'm sorry, I had to mention that, but it's a sort of cross-gender thing that, you know, has spread out.
I can't stand My Little Pony, but I give you that. It is a good example of a show nowadays that is bringing together. It's not being X and Y. It's being a little. I'll give it its credit.
It took an '80s toy that was, you know, a pretty lame little toy in the 80s that was specifically for girls, and now has created this gigantic, huge international fan base.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that sort of, I'm not saying that exact style, that sort of way of episodes, but I think that sort of mindset going into Rainbow Bright, also owned by Hasbro Studios, could be, you know, really beneficial to come back with a big epic plot, really awesome story, and very, very greatly defined characters, because Rainbow Bright had tons of great characters with unique, quirky personalities. So yes, that's my answer.
As long as Rainbow Bright is played by Megan Fox, the greatest actress in the entire universe.
Hold on, we're gonna see Rainbow Bright bending over a lot of cars.
Actually, I would like to see Megan Fox in one reboot movie for a live action. I would like to see Megan Fox in Sailor Moon. Hold on. As Sailor Venus. Think about that. If she fits the role, this really pissed off, full of herself girl, she is the embodiment of Sailor Venus. I'm sorry.
Complete with a club thumb. So Shay, I'm curious, what's yours, Shay? If you can bring back one.
What's yours?
Oh, good Lord.
We made him think he wasn't expecting this to
No. One of the ones, well, this is the forefront of my mind because I was talking to it about one of the other guests, was Sherlock Holmes in the 23rd century.
Ooh.
Now the reason for it, the story concept was excellent. You have the greatest mind, you know, detective of the 18th century who's transported to the future, and how does he fit in this high technological age, information speed? How does he still become relevant as this detective? But the show itself was so cheesily formulaic. Every episode, he instantly fit in, and there was no development curve for him. If I were to see it rebooted, I would want to see it rebooted as a live action series.
Do you think that Sherlock, the BBC show, is actually very close to what you would see in terms of Sherlock being an outsider? And
I do. I think it's developed really well because, well, one, I like how, you know, they're portraying his personality in terms of being, you know, like a borderline sociopath. They deal with his personality disorders in terms of not being able to relate and the brilliance that he has out of it. I think they've really found a way to fit him into modern society. But now let's jumpstart that. I mean, with that series, Sherlock is a product of the 21st century. Right. But instead, now let's put him into a situation where everyone is far in advance of him.
So what you're saying is you want the Doctor to come and pick up Sherlock and, you know, take him to the future.
The doctor does. Dr. Watson picks him up and takes him
after having a conversation with Bilbo and Spock.
Yes.
This is some good fan fiction right now. Where does Twilight Sparkle show?
Are you ready? And they're all playing.
And in the middle of it, in walks Megan Fox.
Yeah.
But, well, actually, you know what? It is time to round up, so I think you should give a round of applause for all of our panelists. Who, I thank you greatly, okay, because most of you had no idea you were, in fact, all of you had no idea you were doing the panel until actually the panel. So, I thank you for jumping in at the last second and making this an absolutely incredible experience.
Wait, are you dual wielding rings? Oh wait, no.
Yes, I'm wearing dual rings.
Hold on. No.
Oh, I have a story for you. Crows was given that ring at a convention because it was lost. Somebody picked it up. Nobody claimed it. Gave it to Crows. You want to know who lost it?
So now, are you guys mortal enemies now?
Yeah, I think so.
Are you Sinestro?
Yeah. Does this make me howl? Yeah.
Yeah. Wait.
Dude, I would never.
I need a larger forehead.
I'd never
for this.
put you in a jet.
Am I Blake Lively in this situation?
Yes, please.
And you can be Parallax the Cloud.
I want to thank you for hosting this panel and keeping
Thank you,
us
Shai.
going
Thank you,
on
Shai.
one subject.
And we know you guys have had a wonderful time at the Midwest Media Expo
Yes,
this
thank
weekend.
you all.
We've had a great time with you. We hope you've had a great time with us.
And make sure to go by closing ceremonies.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm going to say it's going to be a whole lot of fun, but basically I have no idea what I'm going to do. So I'm just saying.
Thank you, everyone.
Dance break.
They go dance break.
Oh god damn it. That dance break that was yelled out. Do 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 wah, do 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 zip zap small tin can. Happy?
Yes.